I have 70 years and beyond worth of stories to tell. I was born in 1950 in Greensboro, North Carolina. Today, the world is changing so fast. Everything is moving so quickly. I want to hang on to my stories. I want to share my stories of yesterday. I want to talk about my life today. And I want to share history the way I remember it. Welcome to 70 Years and Beyond. Welcome to 70 Years and Beyond. My name is Wambui, Bahati. I was a grown woman with my own children when I found out the truth about Scott's barbecue. Now let me back up a little bit. Sometimes when I'm walking through the streets of Harlem on a really hot day, I find myself glancing up toward the sun and I'm asking, are you that Carolina sun? You feel like that Carolina sun caught up with me all the way from North Carolina up here in New York City. You see, when I was a little girl growing up in Greensboro, North Carolina in the 1950s and the 1960s, the summers could be hot. When I was a younger child, I was convinced that North Carolina must have a hotter sun than every place else. It could be hot, and we didn't have air conditioning. We didn't miss air conditioning because we'd never had or lived with air conditioning. We had a few electric fans, and other than that, we would open the front door, the back door, open all the windows, and pray that the screens on the doors and the windows would help protect us from any little pesky bugs or mosquitoes that might want to come in to get us. We didn't get an air conditioner until I was going into high school, I believe. I remember my father coming home one afternoon with this giant air conditioner. It was a window unit air conditioner, a great big one. And that was our first introduction to air conditioning or living with air conditioning. Now, in the summers when school was out, we spent 1 week in vacation Bible school before we would go to Goldsboro, North Carolina for our real summer vacation. Now, we would go to my mother's people's house. That was my mother's father, mother, and her sister down in Goldsboro, North Carolina. They were our nearest relatives. And so we would spend our summer vacations down there. Now, down there in Goldsboro, it seemed like it was even hotter. Still the same story, no air conditioner, but get this. They lived in a house that had a tin roof. Can you imagine a house in the summer in North Carolina, no air conditioning and a tin roof? So it was very hot down there. And again, we depended on the same things, a few electric fans and opening up all the doors and windows and praying that the screens would keep out any pesky little things that might want to get us. My grandmother had some chickens in her backyard, and every now and then she would go out there and get one for dinner. She'd get that chicken, wring the neck, and then she'd put that chicken in a big pot of boiling hot water, and then she'd pluck the feathers out, cut up that chicken, and fry it for dinner. Now, I couldn't eat that chicken. I couldn't eat the chicken that I had seen her kill. I just couldn't do it. And so I would say to them, I can't eat this chicken. Y'all need to go to the store. I need store chicken. Go get me some store chicken. Well, you can imagine how that turned out. It just meant that I didn't eat chicken that day. All through the summer, though, they would tell us, drink your water, drink ice water. They'd have ice water for us, and they just say, drink your ice water, drink your ice water. On some days, even the adults agreed that it was just too hot to cook. So we were going to have a treat, and I looked forward to those days. Now, my grandmother's house was right across the street from Scott's barbecue. Right across the street. We lived in the 1200 block of Greenleaf Street, and the the Scott's barbecue, we could sit on her front porch. Sometimes for entertainment, we would sit on her porch and just look over at Scott's barbecue. Now we're talking about the 1950s, late 50s, maybe early 60s. So Jim Crow laws was still on the books. So we'd watch the white people go into Scott's barbecue, and they could go in and sit down and dine inside. And I'm sure that little, the Scott's barbecue, we knew they had air conditioning in there, but we couldn't go. Now, I don't know if we were at that time called colored people or Negroes, but we were not allowed to go sit inside the Scott's barbecue and sit down. However, they had a window on the side where you could go and order your food, and the Negroes and the colored people could go there and order the food and pick up the food and bring it away. We just couldn't go inside and eat there. And so that's what we would do on special days. On the days when my mother and my grandmother and aunt, even my grandfather would agree it's just too hot. We're not going to turn on a stove today. We're going to go across the street and get some barbecue from Scott's barbecue. And so that's what we would do. And it was so special. And I looked so forward to those days. And the barbecue was good. The food that came out of Scott's barbecue was really good. Now, I'm not trying to take anything away from my mother, my grandmother, and my aunt. They were some cooking women. They could throw down in the kitchen. But Scott's barbecue was really good for a treat. And so somebody would go over to Scott's barbecue, and we'd tell them what we wanted. Usually we got barbecue and hush puppies and I believe coleslaw. And then we'd wait for our order to be done, and when it was done, we'd go to the window and get our order, and we'd bring it back across the street to our house. And you know what was funny sometimes is we would be sitting there on my grandmother's porch eating our Scott's barbecue food, but we couldn't go into Scott's barbecue and sit down and eat it, but we'd be watching we'd be eating our food and watching Scott's barbecue. Now, like I said, I was a grown woman with children before I found out that Scott's barbecue was owned by a black man. Now I need to sit with that for a minute. So we thought we were just going to Scott's barbecue because it was too hot to cook, and we wanted to get some takeout food to bring home to our house to eat without turning on the stove. And what I realized now was that we were actually living history. Yeah. We were living history. 70 years and beyond. Wambui, Bahati.